Enter. What comes to mind? For most of us, it's a rather specific image, isn't it? Someone in a crisp white lab coat, perhaps with neatly combed hair and a pocket protector full of pens. They're standing in a sterile, brightly lit laboratory surrounded by gleaming beakers and complex machinery. It's an image that's been reinforced by decades of films, television, and popular culture. The inventor is the polished professional scientist, the clean-cut genius working within the established system to produce the next big thing. It's a stereotype of methodical, predictable progress, born from institutions and corporate research departments. This picture, while comforting, is fundamentally incomplete. It leaves out a huge swathe of innovators, the ones who don't fit neatly into that box. These are the people whose workshops are cluttered basements or chaotic bedrooms, not pristine labs. Their breakthroughs often come not from formal training, but from a relentless curiosity and a desire to dismantle the world around them just to see how it works. They are the tinkerers, the hackers, the artists, and the dreamers who operate on the fringes. Their inspiration isn't a research grant, it's a frustration with the way things are, and a vision for how they could be different. But what about people who went against the status quo and became great inventors, not despite their life choices, but because of them? What happens when the very things that make someone an outsider, their fashion, their music, their philosophy, their community, become the driving force behind their innovation? Today we're looking at the rebels, the punks, the hippies, and the outsiders who didn't just think outside the box. They smashed the box to pieces and used the fragments to build something entirely new. These are the stories of the rebel innovators. Let's start with Jaron Lanier. If you were to cast a Silicon Valley pioneer in a film, you probably wouldn't pick someone with long, flowing dreadlocks, a wardrobe of colorful bohemian shirts, and a passion for collecting rare and ancient musical instruments. Yet Lanier is exactly that. He's a computer scientist, a composer, a visual artist, and a philosopher. And in the 1980s, he was a central figure in a counterculture that was just beginning to grapple with the digital world. He didn't look or act like the button-down corporate figures who were dominating the tech landscape at the time. His approach was different because his background was different. His company, VPL Research, was one of the very first to sell VR goggles and gloves. This wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a philosophical one. Lanier's vision for virtual reality wasn't about creating corporate training simulations or military applications. It was born from a more artistic, almost psychedelic ambition to create new forms of human communication and shared experience that transcended the limitations of language. It was his unique, outsider perspective, deeply rooted in the artistic and intellectual ferment of the 80s counterculture, that allowed him to not only pioneer the technology, but also to coin the very term virtual reality, giving a name to a dream that we are still chasing today. Now, let's jump forward a couple of decades to the world of open source hardware. Meet Limor Fried, better known by her online handle La Diada. With her signature bright pink hair and a style that screams punk rock, she is the absolute antithesis of the corporate engineer. She is the founder of Adafruit Industries, a company that has become a cornerstone of the maker movement. Fried didn't set out to build a multi-million-dollar company. She set out to empower people. Her ethos is pure DIY punk. Take things apart, figure them out, and share what you learn with everyone. Before Adafruit, getting into electronics was an intimidating prospect. It meant deciphering dense textbooks and sourcing obscure components from faceless industrial suppliers. Limor Fried changed all that. She started by designing and selling kits for projects she wanted to build herself, like an MP3 player in a mint tin. She wrote clear, accessible tutorials, shot friendly, engaging videos from her workshop, and fostered a community built on sharing and collaboration. Her punk-inspired, anti-establishment approach democratized engineering, making it fun, colorful, and accessible for students, artists, and hobbyists who had previously been shut out. She made hacking hardware cool. Innovation doesn't just come from challenging contemporary norms. Sometimes it comes from challenging the deep-seated prejudices of an entire era. Let's go back to the 1950s and talk about Annie Easley. In an age of rigid social segregation and gender roles, Easley was a triple threat to the status quo. She was a woman, she was African American, and she was a brilliant mathematician and computer scientist. She started her career at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, the precursor to NASA, as a human computer, performing complex calculations by hand. She didn't have a lab coat. She had perseverance. Easily didn't just do her job, she consistently broke down barriers. When human computers were replaced by machines, she didn't become obsolete. She taught herself Fortran and became an adept computer programmer. She worked on groundbreaking energy technologies, including software for the Centaur rocket stage, which was crucial for laying the groundwork for future space missions, satellite launches and probes. Her very presence in those rooms, her excellence in a field that was overwhelmingly white and male, was a revolutionary act. She became a powerful symbol and mentor, inspiring generations in alternative tech circles and subcultures who saw in her a pioneer who proved that genius has no dress code, gender or race. So what's the difference between an annoying children's toy and a musical instrument? Sometimes, honestly, it's just a bit of wire and, well, a rebellious spirit. This is the world of circuit bending, an art form pioneered by people who look more like they belong in a punk rock band than, say, an electronics lab. Take Reed Ghazala, often called the father of circuit bending. Sporting a look that could be described as part mad scientist, part goth icon, Ghazala discovered in the 1960s that by short-circuiting the electronics of cheap toys, you could create bizarre, complex and entirely new sounds. This wasn't about precise engineering, it was about creative chaos. Circuit benders, many emerging from punk, goth and cyberpunk subcultures, embraced randomness and happy accidents. Armed with soldering irons and alligator clips, they would pry open speak and spells, toy keyboards and talking dolls, transforming them into unique synthesizers and sound generators. These inventors, often with mohawks, piercings and leather jackets, weren't following schematics, they were exploring. They created an entire genre of music and instrument design based on the punk ethos of taking mass-produced consumer junk and twisting it into a tool for radical self-expression. When you think of technological pioneers, the furry fandom is probably not the first community that comes to mind, but that would be a mistake. This subculture, centered around anthropomorphic animal characters, is a surprisingly vibrant hub of artistic and technical innovation. Far from being a niche interest, the community's creative drive has pushed the boundaries of everything from digital avatars and virtual reality to robotics and animatronics. It's a perfect example of a community's passion driving invention. Look at the world of VR Chat, a platform that has become a haven for the furry community. Furry developers and artists are constantly creating incredibly complex and expressive custom avatars, pushing the platform's capabilities to their limits with custom shaders, physics, and interactive features that go far beyond what was originally intended. In the physical world, fursuit makers are incorporating sophisticated animatronics, moving ears, blinking eyes, expressive faces that require a deep understanding of robotics and electronics. This is innovation driven not by profit, but by the desire to bring a creative vision to life, blending artistry and engineering in a way that is uniquely their own. Before the internet was dominated by slick corporate websites and social media giants, it was a much wilder place, a digital frontier shaped by hackers, activists, and subcultures. The goth and punk scenes of the 80s and 90s were instrumental in this. They brought their DIY ethos from the physical world of zines and cassette tapes into the nascent digital realm. Zine culture, self-published, photocopied magazines, was a direct precursor to the personal blog and the independent website. It was about creating your own media, unfiltered by the mainstream. This spirit of anti-authoritarianism also fueled the hacktivist movement. Groups like the Cult of the Dead Cow, with members who embraced alt aesthetics, used their technical skills not just for pranks, but for promoting human rights and freedom of speech online. In music, the industrial and goth scenes were early adopters of new technology. They didn't just use synthesizers, they modified them, built their own and experimented with samplers to create entirely new soundscapes. This was innovation, born from a desire to create a culture that was truly their own, both online and off, fundamentally shaping the tools for digital publishing and music creation we use today. The counterculture of the 1960s is often associated with peace, love, and music, but it also planted the seeds for two major revolutions that define our modern world: the organic food movement and the personal computer. The hippie philosophy was one of anti-establishment, decentralization, and a return to the land. This led directly to the rise of organic farming and the creation of whole food co-ops, a radical rejection of the industrialized, processed food system that was becoming dominant at the time. It was a grassroots innovation in how we think about what we eat. That same philosophy of empowerment and decentralization profoundly influenced the pioneers of the personal computer. Figures like Stuart Brand, with his Whole Earth catalogue, created a Bible for the counterculture that blended hippie ideals with access to tools and information. This publication directly inspired a young Steve Jobs, who saw the personal computer not as a tool for big corporations, but as a bicycle for the mind, a device that could empower individuals. The aesthetic and philosophy of early Apple, the user-friendly approach championed by both Jobs and Wozniak, was steeped in this desire to take power from centralized mainframes and give it to the people. It was a hippie ideal realized in silicon. So what do a dreadlocked VR pioneer, a punk rock engineer, a NASA rocket scientist, and a furry avatar creator all have in common? They prove that innovation isn't confined to a single type of person or a single way of thinking. True, game-changing progress often comes from the margins, from the people who see the world differently because they live in it differently. Their unique perspectives, born from their subcultures, their philosophies, and their struggles, are not a hindrance to invention. They are the very source of its power. They ask questions no one else is asking and find solutions no one else could imagine. These stories remind us that the next great breakthrough is just as likely to come from a cluttered workshop, a collaborative art project, or a community of outsiders, as it is from a multi-billion-dollar research facility. It's a powerful reminder that diversity in thought, experience, and lifestyle is the fuel for creativity. When we create space for people who challenge the norm, who bring their whole authentic selves to their work, we create a richer, more innovative world for everyone. The rebels and the misfits aren't just decorating the edges of society, they are actively building its future. So the next time you picture an inventor, perhaps you won't just see a lab coat. Perhaps you'll see pink hair, a leather jacket, or a colorful shirt. We should celebrate the inventors who break the mold, the ones who prove that the most powerful tool for innovation is the courage to be different. Because history shows again and again that those who dare to go against the grain are the ones